Right now, at this very moment, you're obeying rules you never consented to. You didn't sign any contract. You didn't debate the terms. These rules were installed in your mind like silent malware, running in the background of every decision you make. You're chasing goals that were never yours. That college degree, the 30-year mortgage, the corner office, the gold watch retirement. You climb this ladder rung by rung, only to discover, too late, that it was leaning against the wrong building all along. And perhaps most tragic of all, you constantly fear judgment from people whose opinions you'd never seek voluntarily. Strangers, co-workers, social media ghosts. You twist yourself into knots to please an audience that wouldn't cross the street to spit on you if you were on fire. The psychologist Erich Fromm gave this phenomenon a name: the escape from freedom. Notice he didn't call it lost freedom or stolen freedom. This is freedom willingly surrendered, because the terrifying truth is this: human beings would rather play the comfortable slave than stand alone as a free man. The weight of true liberty is simply too heavy for most shoulders to bear. This video isn't about rebellion. Rebellion still dances to the system's tune. It's just dancing backward. This is about awakening. The kind of awakening that comes when you suddenly see the iron bars surrounding a cage you've lived in your entire life. A cage so familiar you mistook it for the sky. Let me ask you a question so simple it's almost insulting. Would you choose this life if you'd been born outside this system? If you'd grown up alone on a deserted island, never exposed to advertising, never indoctrinated by schools, never conditioned by social expectations? Would you naturally invent the 40-hour work week, credit card debt, apologizing for your existence, the discomfort you're feeling right now, that tightness in your chest, that sinking sensation in your gut? That's your authentic self fighting back. It's the part of you that still remembers what it means to be undomesticated, uncivilized, unbroken. There are 3 invisible chains keeping you tethered to this broken system. The first chain is manufactured hunger. They didn't just sell you products, they sold you an entire identity in a box. You're not attractive enough. Buy this makeup. You're not successful enough. Buy that car. You're not happy enough. Buy this vacation. Your sense of self has become a Frankenstein monster, stitched together from magazine covers and Instagram ads and late-night infomercials. The second chain is the fear vaccine. Fromm understood this better than anyone. We've been inoculated against our own freedom. We actively elect our jailers. We beg for more rules. We trade our autonomy for the warm, suffocating lie of belonging. Because standing alone in your truth feels like death when the alternative is marching comfortably with the crowd, even when that crowd is walking straight off a cliff. The third chain is the grand illusion of choice. You think you're free because you get to pick your brand of bondage. Coke or Pepsi, Democrat or Republican, Apple or Android, McMansion or urban loft. Here's how you know it's all theater. When was the last time you encountered a truly dangerous option? A choice that would actually make the system sweat? They need you to believe you're too small to change anything. So you'll keep clicking agree to terms and conditions without reading them, including the most devastating clause of all. I agree to die with my music still inside me. The escape begins when you stop asking for permission to want something different. When you realize the most dangerous thought isn't I refuse or I rebel. The thought that truly terrifies them is this: what if none of this is necessary? What if the 40-hour work week is just a relic of factory times? What if college is just an overpriced filtering system? What if everything you've been chasing is just someone else's profit model disguised as destiny? That moment of realization, that split second when the illusion cracks, is where your true life begins. Everything before that was just rehearsal, a practice run in a play you never auditioned for. The bars of your cage are made of nothing stronger than inherited ideas. which means you've been holding the key this whole time. You just mistook it for a shackle. Let's examine the three primary mechanisms that keep modern humans docile and compliant. These are not theories. These are observable operational systems working in plain sight. The first mechanism is what we might call consumption as salvation. You were born into a world where your worth is measured by your purchasing power. From childhood, you've been conditioned to believe that happiness lives just one purchase away. That new car smell? They told you it was the scent of success. That luxury watch? They promised it would make people respect you. That dream home? They swore it would finally make you feel secure. But Erich Fromm's work reveals the terrible truth. Consumerism is a spiritual trap. The more you consume, the emptier you become. That hollow feeling after your latest purchase isn't buyer's remorse. It's your soul rejecting the false promise that meaning can be bought. The system needs you perpetually hungry, not for nutrition but for validation through ownership. So it feeds you everything except what actually nourishes purpose, connection, authentic self-expression. The second mechanism is what Fromm famously termed the fear of freedom. This is perhaps the most insidious control system of all. Human beings will voluntarily surrender their autonomy to avoid the terrifying responsibility of true independence. We'd rather wear visible chains than face the invisible weight of absolute freedom. Consider how this plays out in daily life. That job you hate but won't quit because it provides stability. Those relationships you maintain despite their emptiness because being alone seems worse. Those opinions you withhold because speaking your truth might make others uncomfortable. This isn't weakness, this is programming. The system has convinced us that safety lives in conformity, that belonging requires self-betrayal. The third mechanism is the grand illusion of choice. Modern society presents itself as a marketplace of infinite options. But this is psychological sleight of hand. You're given countless variations of the same fundamental constraints. iPhone or Android, two nearly identical operating systems produced by the same corporate culture, Democrat or Republican. Two sides of the same political establishment, urban loft or suburban home. Different packaging for the same mortgage slavery. Fromm saw through this illusion with brutal clarity. Modern man thinks he's free because he can choose his master. We mistake menu options for liberty, never asking who designed the menu or what items were deliberately excluded. Where's the option to reject the 40-hour workweek entirely? Why can't we choose an education system that doesn't require lifelong debt? When did we vote to measure human worth in productivity metrics? These three mechanisms, consumption as salvation, fear of freedom, and illusory choice, form an interlocking system of control. They reinforce each other with terrifying efficiency. The consumption economy keeps us too busy and distracted to question our chains. Our fear of isolation prevents us from breaking social norms, and the illusion of choice convinces us we're already free, making actual freedom seem unnecessary. Social conditioning operates like gravity, invisible but inescapable. You don't feel its constant pressure until you try to move against it. That resistance you feel when contemplating a different path? That's not personal failure. That's the system reasserting its grip. But here's what the architects of this system fear most. Every control mechanism contains its own vulnerability. Consumerism collapses when people realize products can't fill spiritual voids. Conformity loses power when the pain of pretending exceeds the fear of isolation. False choices are exposed when someone asks the dangerous question, who decided these were my only options? These systems share one fatal weakness. They can't account for the human capacity for awakening. The moment you see the machinery, you can't unsee it. The moment you recognize the programming, you begin the process of rewriting it. This isn't about revolution. Revolutions often just replace one control system with another. This is about something far more radical. the quiet, individual decision to stop participating in your own captivity, to recognize that the most powerful form of rebellion is simply living as if you were already free. The tragedy isn't that we're trapped. The tragedy is that we hold the keys but have been trained to fear what lies outside ourselves. The systems conditioning us rely on one fundamental assumption: that we'll never collectively realize how fragile they actually are, that we'll never recognize our own strength, that we'll never dare to imagine what might happen if enough people simply stopped chasing, stopped pretending, stopped obeying. The choice has always been yours, not the false choices they've offered, the real one, the one they hoped you'd never think to demand. Now, we move from diagnosis to treatment. These are not abstract philosophies. These are 3 concrete exercises to systematically dismantle your conditioning, each one designed to create space between the programmed response and your authentic choice. The first exercise is what I call the daily interrogation. Every morning before the world imposes its agenda, you must ask one ruthless question about every significant decision. Is this truly mine, or was it implanted? That promotion you're chasing, is that your ambition or your father's unfinished business? That designer handbag you covet, is that your aesthetic or the advertising industry's suggestion? That timeline for marriage and children, is that your rhythm or society's metronome? Here's how to tell the difference. Authentic desires feel like expansion, like breathing deeper. Manufactured desires feel like obligation, like wearing clothes that don't fit. When you consider buying that luxury car, notice your body's response. Is there a flutter of excitement in your chest, or a sinking feeling in your gut about the debt? That physical response is your internal compass, cutting through the noise of conditioning. The second exercise is the silence experiment. For one full day, eliminate all external inputs. No social media, no news, no music, no podcasts, no books. Just you and the empty space between your thoughts. Most people go their entire lives without ever hearing themselves think. Their mental landscape is a crowded marketplace of borrowed opinions, rehearsed responses, and echo chamber chatter. In the first hour of silence, you'll panic. By hour 6, you'll become irritable. Around hour 12, something remarkable happens. You begin hearing whispers of a voice you forgot existed. That desperate urge to call someone just to fill the silence, that's your addiction to distraction screaming for relief. That phantom vibration where your phone usually sits, that's your nervous system detoxing from dopamine hits. Stay with the discomfort. On the other side of that emptiness waits the person you were before the world told you who to be. The third exercise is fear autopsy. Select one social rule you've never questioned and dissect it mercilessly. What is the absolute worst outcome if you violate it? What happens if you quit your stable job without a backup plan? What happens if you tell your family you're not having children? What happens if you wear pajamas to a formal event? Write down every catastrophic scenario your mind generates. Then examine them under the cold light of reason. Will you actually die? Will the universe implode? Or will you simply endure temporary discomfort while discovering most punishments are social fiction? This is reverse engineering your conditioning. You're not rebelling recklessly. You're conducting controlled experiments to prove how flimsy the threats really are. When you discover that breaking minor social rules leads not to execution, but to liberation, you begin questioning everything. These 3 exercises share a common purpose: widening that critical gap between stimulus and response. That split second where you choose rather than react, where you act from intention rather than conditioning. True freedom doesn't begin with dramatic gestures, it grows in microscopic moments. That extra breath before automatically saying yes to something you hate. That pause before laughing at an unfunny joke just to belong. That instant, you catch yourself reaching for your phone to avoid being alone with your thoughts. The system depends on your unconscious compliance. Each time you insert that moment of conscious choice, you weaken its grip. This process isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world went to work on you. The child who played without worrying about status. The teenager who hadn't yet learned to fear solitude. The person who existed before they became a brand, a resume, a collection of carefully curated likes. The path back to yourself isn't found in accumulation. It's revealed through subtraction, layer by layer, habit by habit, fear by fear, until all that remains is what's real. The daily interrogation trains you to distinguish authentic desires from implanted ones. The silence experiment reintroduces you to yourself. The fear autopsy proves the prison walls are made of cardboard. Together they form a systematic approach to deconditioning, not overnight, not without discomfort, but with measurable progress you can track in your increasing ability to choose rather than obey. This isn't philosophy. This is practical psychology. The system runs on your automatic responses. Every time you interrupt that automation, you reclaim territory in your own mind. Start small. Question 1, purchase. Endure 1 hour of silence. Break one insignificant rule. The confidence gained from these small acts compounds exponentially. Soon, you'll find yourself questioning bigger assumptions. Then one day, you'll realize the most profound truth. The locks were always on your side of the door. The only person who needed convincing that you were free was you. The work is simple but not easy. It requires facing uncomfortable truths about how much of your life has been lived on autopilot. But the reward is what Fromm called positive freedom. Not just freedom from constraints, but freedom to create yourself anew. This is how conditioning loses its power. Not through revolution, but through relentless daily acts of conscious choice. The system can survive occasional rebels. It cannot survive widespread awakening. Your personal liberation is therefore both selfish and revolutionary. In remembering yourself, you make space for others to do the same. Freedom isn't about rebellion. Rebellion still acknowledges the master. True freedom comes when you stop playing games you never agreed to join. This is what Fromm meant when he observed that in a sick society, sanity appears as madness. The healthiest response to a broken system isn't louder participation. It's quiet non-participation. Consider the simple act of opting out. Not with fanfare, not with announcements. Just the steady refusal to feed what doesn't nourish you. When they say jump, you don't ask how high, you ask why jumping is necessary at all. This isn't defiance. It's something far more dangerous. Indifference. The system can handle anger. It thrives on conflict. What breaks its back is when people simply stop caring about its rewards and punishments. Authentic power has nothing to do with controlling others. Real strength lies in refusing to let others control what you value. Steve Jobs wearing turtlenecks wasn't a fashion statement. It was a declaration that his mind wouldn't waste energy on trivial decisions. Einstein's wild hair wasn't neglect. It was the visible proof of a man who'd stopped performing for others. These weren't rebels making statements. They were free men who'd stopped asking permission to exist on their own terms. The path forward isn't about burning down systems. That just creates new cages. The real work happens in the quiet moments when you choose not to feed the machine, when you don't share the viral outrage, when you don't upgrade to the newest model, when you don't laugh at the joke that isn't funny. Each silent no is a brick removed from the prison wall. There's profound power in becoming what the system can't categorize. Not a rebel, not a conformist. Something else entirely, a person who simply stopped performing expected roles. Like a lion that never wonders if it should act like a sheep. You reach a point where the opinions of others become background noise. Not because you're arrogant, but because you're too focused on building something real to worry about appearances. This shift doesn't happen overnight. It begins with small acts of non-compliance, keeping your phone on silent during meals, not answering emails after 6, wearing what's comfortable rather than what's expected. Each act trains your nervous system to tolerate the discomfort of freedom. Because that's the dirty secret. Freedom feels terrifying before it feels exhilarating. The world will try to pull you back. Friends will say you're changing. Family will worry you're not following the script. Colleagues will whisper that you've lost ambition. These reactions aren't about you. They're about the threat your freedom poses to those still in chains. When someone encounters a free person, it holds up a mirror to their own captivity. Most would rather drag you back than face that reflection. But here's what they don't tell you. On the other side of that discomfort is a life of surprising ease. When you stop chasing external validation, you discover how little you actually need. When you quit performing for invisible audiences, you find energy you didn't know you had. When you stop asking, "Do they approve?" and start asking, "Does this feel true?" That's when you begin living rather than being lived. The system wants you to believe freedom requires grand gestures. It doesn't. Freedom is what grows in the space between stimulus and response when you stop reacting on command. It's the accumulated weight of 1,000 small no's that eventually allows you to say the big yes to yourself. This isn't about being different for difference's sake. It's about finally being exactly who you are without apology, not as a statement, not as a protest, but as the most natural thing in the world, a human being no longer at war with themselves. That's when you become dangerous in the best possible way, not because you're trying to be, but because you've stopped trying altogether. Freedom comes with a receipt no one shows you up front. Fromm understood this better than anyone. True liberation is a lonely road. Most people would rather adjust their chains than risk the terrifying weight of absolute autonomy. This isn't pessimism. This is preparation. If you're going to walk this path, you should know exactly what it costs. The first truth no one tells you: freedom isolates. When you start thinking for yourself, you'll outgrow relationships. When you stop playing status games, you'll disappear from certain circles. When you question shared assumptions, you'll make people uncomfortable. This isn't rejection, it's natural selection. Your authenticity weeding out what was never real to begin with. Fromm was right. Most would prefer the warm lie of belonging to the cold truth of standing alone. Here's the second truth. The system will punish you. Not because it's evil, but because your freedom exposes others' captivity. When you stop chasing promotions, it makes your coworkers question their own hustle. When you opt out of consumerism, it makes your friends examine their own spending. Your mere existence as a free person becomes a mirror showing others their self-imposed prisons. They'll try to break that mirror rather than face what it shows. This is why you must become comfortable being the black sheep, the questioner, the one who makes people shift in their seats. The system hates you not because you're dangerous, but because you're a constant reminder of what others have surrendered. Your freedom whispers to their subconscious what they've buried long ago, that another life was possible. That's why they'll call you crazy. That's why they'll say you've changed. That's how you'll know it's working. Fromm offered this uncomfortable wisdom. The only way to cope with fear is to become it. This is the final initiation. Not conquering fear, but merging with it. Not overcoming loneliness, but making it your ally. The moment you stop resisting the discomfort of freedom is the moment it stops having power over you. The isolation becomes solitude. The uncertainty becomes possibility. The fear becomes fuel. What you're doing here isn't self-improvement. That implies there's something wrong with you that needs fixing. This is awakening, remembering who you were before the world got its hands on you, peeling back layers of conditioning to find the core that was always there. This isn't about becoming someone new. It's about unbecoming everything you never were. They'll tell you you're being dramatic, that you're overcomplicating things, that everyone else seems happy enough playing the game. But deep down, you know the truth they're too afraid to admit. Normal is a myth sold to the masses. Healthy people in a sick society appear ill. Sane people in a mad world look crazy. Free people in a system of control seem dangerous. The road ahead isn't easy, but it's simple. Every day, in ways large and small, you must choose yourself over the script, your values over validation, your truth over tradition. At first, it will feel like swimming upstream. Then one day you'll realize the current was never your friend. The loneliness will give way to something unexpected. Not happiness, but something better. Peace. Not the absence of problems, but the presence of alignment. They'll call you crazy. Good. That's how you know you're winning. They'll say you've changed. Correct. That was always the point. They'll warn you're throwing your life away. The truth? You're finally claiming it. This isn't inspiration. This isn't motivation. This is a wake-up call to those few willing to hear it. The world doesn't need more successful sleepwalkers. It needs fully awake human beings. The choice was always yours, not the false choices they offered, the real one, the one they hoped you'd never think to make. Fromm was right about one final thing. There's no going back once your eyes are open. You can pretend. You can try to fit in again, but you'll always know the truth. The bars were never locked. The door was always open. The only guard at the gate was your own fear. Now you know. What happens next is entirely up to you.